I hosted a public Homelab server on my phone. But to understand why I did this, we have to go back to February 2025. At that time, I was making my personal website and needed a domain to host my website at. So when scouting for domains, I was confused between these two website domains. At first, I bought the first one as it was cheaper, but I don't know why I bought the second one as well, even though I only used the first one and then completely forgot about the other. And now when I remembered, there's only 1 month left before that other domain expires. And I know I had to use it for something just to justify that purchase to myself. So instead of letting it go to waste, I decided to give it a purpose by turning my phone into a public Homelab server. I had three old phones with me. One is Android 9, the other is Android 6, and the last one is Android 5. And long story short, one is not safe for work, one is too slow, and this left me with this phone. So to host this Homelab server, we need to install Termux so we can access the terminal in Android. In Android 5 and 6, the latest packages are not available and no new packages are added, and this will create us problems. But as I don't have any other good options, I have to go with it. After the Termux is installed, I have to set up SSH server to make my life a little bit easier. If you don't know what SSH is, it is a software program that helps us to connect to remote computers using a secure shell protocol. After setting and running the SSH server, I connected to my phone using my laptop. But there was a problem. On Android, when you connect through a hotspot, the local IP address isn't stable. It changes randomly, which means every time I wanted to connect locally, I had to get the IP address of the phone again. So to fix this problem, I installed Python in Termux and wrote a small script that runs a MDNS responder. So basically, the phone announces itself on the local network so I can connect using a name instead of an IP address. The next step was making the device accessible publicly. And for that, I decided to use Cloudflare tunnels to expose it to the internet without opening any ports on the phone. So I set up a Cloudflare account and added my domain. The changes didn't apply instantly. I had to wait for them to propagate. Once the DNS changes were applied, I set up an HTTP tunnel. To run tunnels, Cloudflare requires a small client called Cloudflare, so I installed it on the phone. But when I tried to start the tunnel, it failed with a strange error. Cloudflare was trying to resolve the DNS through the IPv6 loopback address, which doesn't work properly in my environment. So instead of fighting the setup, I decided to patch the Cloudflare itself. I built a custom version that forces DNS resolution through Cloudflare's resolver directly. And after that, the tunnel just worked. Now when the server isn't running, Cloudflare shows a default error page. I didn't want that. So I created a simple static offline page and hosted it on Cloudflare pages. Then I added a Cloudflare worker that checks whether the server is up or down. And if it's down, the worker automatically serves the static page instead. Next, I built a basic web UI using HTML, CSS and JavaScript and hosted it on the home page. Here's what it looks like. Very simple, very minimal. And of course, we will be adding 3 more things to make it slightly cooler. The first thing I wanted to add was SSH access directly from the browser. So I could access the server from literally anywhere without carrying my laptop with me every time. To make this work, I created an SSH tunnel using Cloudflare and then wrapped it with a Cloudflare access application. On top of that, I added access policies so only the authorized people can get in and not the entire internet. And this is what it looks like now. Full SSH access running straight in the browser. The next thing I want to add is a self-hosted Git server to handle both my public and private repository because trusting only one platform feels risky. To make this accessible from anywhere, I created another Cloudflare tunnel for Git and decided to use Forgeo for my self-hosted Git server. But before any of that could work, I needed a proper Linux environment. So I installed proot distro and set up a Debian environment. Normally in Android 7 plus versions, we can directly install using pkg command. But for my device, I had to manually install proot distro using the instructions in the GitHub. And then I installed the Debian 11 version. Now using the Debian environment, I downloaded the Forgeo binary and run the server. Then I went through the web setup and just like that, my own self-hosted Git server was alive. Now I'll simply mirror my repositories here as well. so I can have backup for my repositories. Now there's one more thing left that I want to add for my Homelab server for now. It's Cgit, which is a lightweight and hyperfast web interface for Git repositories, written in C programming language. It allows us to browse the source code of repositories through a web browser, similar to Forgeo, but with zero fluff and maximum speed. Setting it up was refreshingly simple. Since I was already running Debian, I installed Cgit directly from the Debian repositories, along with live HTTPD server to serve it. Then I enabled CGI support in live HTTPD, plugged Cgit into it, and that's it. The site was up, running, and fast, which is exactly the vibe I wanted for this server. Now, technically, I could host a lot more things here, like cloud storage, game servers, dev websites, and more. But for now, those aren't really my priority. I wanted this setup to stay simple, stable, and usable, not turn into another project I could never finish. Now there were still a few important things left to handle. First is that I want a way to back up the whole server periodically, so that even if something wrong happens, I have backup for all my data. To do that, I installed Arclone package in Termux and set up a Google Drive access in the Arclone config. After setting this, I created a backup script that will backup all the necessary data I wanted and upload it directly to the Google Drive. And since manually running backups is just a feature me made, I automated the whole thing using cron job in Termux, and now the server backs itself up periodically. Now at this point it looks like everything is done, but no, there is one last thing left to set up. As you can see, there are so many things we had set up, but now it is hard to do this every time the server restarts. So to make my life easier, I installed a Termux boot app, which automatically starts Termux whenever the phone powers on from a switched off state. On top of that, I wrote a boot script that starts all the required services automatically. And to keep things organized, I used Termux to run each service in its own session, so I can attach, detach, restart, and manage everything later easily. And now when the phone restarts, the server just comes back to life on its own. So this is how I turned my old phone into a public Homelab server. It's hosting my website, handling SSH, Git, Cgit, backups, tunnels, all running on a device that was probably meant to spend its life in a drawer. Is this the most powerful server in the world? Definitely not. Is this most practical setup? Also probably not. But that's not the point. The point was to learn, to experiment, and to prove that you don't need an expensive hardware or a perfect setup to build something real. All you need is curiosity, a bit of time, and sometimes a domain name you forgot to use.